I think one thing John Wesley would celebrate is the diverse congregation we have today at Wesley's Chapel. And one thing which would grieve his heart is how COVID-19 is affecting everyone globally right now during this time.
John Wesley would purchase PPE equipment and get important logistics, especially for widows. He would be really sad today to see that homelessness still exists.
What would please John Wesley today? Diversity in London. What would grieve John Wesley today? Prejudice and racism.
If John Wesley were alive today, I think he'd be very impressed by our internet ministry, but sad that class meetings, which were a major part of his ministry, have all but died out in the denomination he founded.
If John Wesley was alive today in 2020, he would celebrate the discussions on marriage and relationships that is happening in Methodism, and he would grieve still the poverty gap that we see here in the UK and many countries at this very moment.
I think seeing the number of deaths caused by coronavirus could grieve Wesley's heart, especially in developing countries where resources to help people are scarce. But I think he would celebrate in the fact that churches have been able to stay strong throughout, meeting on Zoom and continuing fellowship and not allowing social distancing to break down the church.
I think John Wesley would love the racial diversity, the different kinds of people around in our churches. I think he'd still grieve how divided we are.
John Wesley would have been proud that the word was being spread around on the bandwidth of the internet as it is. And he'd be sad that his flame was not felt by more at this time of trouble.
John Wesley will be very pleased with how far women have come and the active role they're playing, but will be very upset, I'm sure, that God is being pushed out of our communities.
John Wesley might be sad that we don't have a group fellowship where we can meet in group and hug ourselves. And at the end of the day as well, he might be happy that we have a live stream that people follow us. We have more than 328 followers on Saturday, which I feel John Wesley, if he's around today, he will be happy with that. People are really sitting down at home and praying and listening to the word of God. I think he will be happy with that.
John Wesley would rejoice that there are such warm relationships between different traditions in the church today, but it would grieve his heart that there are still so many in our society who have little to no voice in our public affairs.
John Wesley would have deeply grieved over the large amount of people perishing on daily basis at the hands of the deadly coronavirus pandemic and rendering medical personnel helpless. Perhaps he would have felt drawn to compose a hymn that will reassure and give people hope.
I think that John Wesley believes that life depends on physical and spiritual well-being. He would be glad that his congregation is safe.
I think John Wesley would be happy that so many people are pulling together to help others, especially during this coronavirus pandemic, but sad that so many people still are going without their basic needs.
Wesley might celebrate the state of the chapel architecture, the fact that it still kept its design. His heart might be grieved by the negative impacts of modernisation, like bullying on the internet, etc.
I think John Wesley would celebrate the fact that in these COVID-19 times we've grabbed the metal and we have sought to connect electronically with each other in life-affirming ways. But it would also grieve his heart if, in so doing, we lost the essential nature of class meetings where we could connect, humanly and physically with one another in a way that asks, how goes it with your soul, in order to journey further together.